Most writers think the problem is writer's block. That's usually how it feels, and that's usually how we explain it. You sit down, you open the document, you look at the page, and nothing seems to move, even though you know the story is there somewhere. So the explanation comes almost automatically. You tell yourself you are blocked, that you have lost inspiration, that maybe today is just not the right moment and it would be better to wait until the feeling comes back. And waiting feels reasonable, because if the problem is inspiration, then time should fix it. The issue is that this interpretation sounds kind and familiar, but it's quietly pointing you in the wrong direction. Hi, I'm Andrea, the founder of bibisco, the novel writing software downloaded by more than 200,000 writers around the world. And in this video, I don't want to motivate you or push you to write more or tell you how to break through anything. I want to slow down and look more carefully at what's actually happening in those moments we usually call writer's block, because once you see it clearly, the whole experience starts to feel different. If you think back to the beginning of a writing project, things usually feel much lighter. At the start, the story is still small enough to live comfortably in your head. You might not know every detail, but you have a direction, a few strong images, maybe a character or a situation that gives everything a sense of unity. You can think about the whole thing at once without much effort, and when you sit down to write, there is space to move, to explore, to improvise. Then the time passes, the story grows, which is exactly what it's supposed to do. You add characters, relationships, events that depend on other events, backstories that explain why certain things matter, and scenes that only make sense if something else has already happened. Nothing is broken, the project is just becoming more complex, and at a certain point something shifts. Not emotionally, not creatively, but cognitively. There are simply too many moving parts to keep active in your mind at the same time, and when you try to focus on one thing, several others immediately ask for attention. So instead of moving forward, you stall, and because that stalling feels uncomfortable and frustrating, we give it a familiar name: writer's block. But if you pay attention to the sensation itself, it doesn't really feel like emptiness, it feels like overload. This is also why waiting for inspiration rarely helps. While you are waiting, the story doesn't become simpler. Unsorted ideas stay unsorted, open questions remain open, loose connection remain loose. So when you come back, the project doesn't feel clearer, it feels heavier, and that's when the explanation turns inward. You start questioning your motivation, your discipline, sometimes even your ability to write at all, instead of questioning whether the project has simply outgrown what your mind can comfortably hold on its own. If this description feels familiar, you are not alone. And if this way of looking at it is resonating with you, feel free to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps more writers find these ideas. Alright, let's go back to the point. What's missing in these moments when you sit down, open the document, and nothing moves isn't inspiration. It's something much simpler. It's orientation. And by that, I don't mean anything abstract or technical. I just mean this. Orientation is not having to figure everything out while you are writing. That's it. It doesn't mean knowing everything in advance. It just means that writing a sentence doesn't also require solving the entire story at the same time. For example, orientation is sitting down to write and having at least a rough sense of what should happen next. Not how well it will be written, not whether it's good or bad, but simply whether someone needs to do something, say something, or react to something that already happened. When that isn't clear, every sentence feels heavy, because while you are writing, you are also trying to understand why this moment exists at all. Orientation is also having a sense of where you are in the story, not page numbers or chapter counts, but whether things are still getting more complicated or whether you are approaching a moment that needs to change something. When you don't have that sense, it's easy to feel like you are writing without going anywhere, even if the words are coming out. And then there's something that quietly drains a lot of energy. Orientation is not having to keep everything in your head, not constantly remembering who already knows what, who is upset with whom, or why two characters can simply talk things through. When all of that lives only in your mind, a huge amount of mental effort goes into not making mistakes instead of into writing. When these things are clear, even in an imperfect way, writing doesn't suddenly become easy, but it becomes possible. When they are not, even a simple page can feel impossible to start, not because inspiration is missing, but because the mind is overloaded, and that overload is what many people end up calling writer's block. Calling it that hides the real problem. It turns a navigation issue into an emotional one. It makes writers wait for energy instead of clarity, and it quietly adds guilt to something that is actually a normal consequence of complexity. So let's say this plainly. Most writers are not blocked, they are overloaded, and overload doesn't need inspiration, it needs orientation. Bibisco was built around this idea, around the moment when a story becomes too big to live only in your head, when the writer doesn't need more pressure or motivation, but a way to stay oriented as the project grows. If you want a writing space designed around this way of thinking, you can find the link to Bibisco in the description, because most writers don't need motivation, they need orientation.